for other people that couldn't get out. My mother, who didn't wear the Mogen shopped and schlepped for other relatives and friends, and she was really a yeoman. She did a tremendous job to keep everybody above water, keep everybody fed. In the spring of 1942, the school was closed and all schooling for Jewish children was outlawed. There were some teachers that defied the edict, and we went to their homes to get instructions. And then on June 10th, 1942, the first transport from Wiesbaden to the east was started. Most of the kids I went to school with were on that transport. And I just lately found out that they were sent from Wiesbaden by train to Lublin in Poland, and then a day later were sent to the Sobibor concentration camp, which didn't have any barracks, was just set up for killing Jews wholesale with carbon monoxide. They set up engines and they took the exhaust and put it into these gas chambers. So they left on June 10th, and within the same month, before the month of June was over, they had been killed. My father was an artist before he became a salesman, and we went and painted names of people on suitcases to get ready for deportation so they could identify their suitcases. I remember going with him to one lady, Mrs. Schoenfeld, who was an elderly widow in her 60s, and she had decided she was going to take her own life rather than go on a transport a few days later. And she had some black money that was hidden, and she gave it to my father, and that money came in very handy to sustain us during the following years in Germany. Another friend of mine, a fellow named Julius Jarrett, came on the last day before the transport, and he gave us a stamp collection that he had assembled to keep until he could come back and retrieve it from us. At that time, we knew that we weren't going to be on the transport. That took a while to figure out because the German rules were very complicated, and we were exempted from that particular transport because of my mother's Aryan background. And on September 1st, 1942, older people were transported. I went to the synagogue where they had to assemble, and for 3 days, these elderly people were really suffering. They came out of middle-class circumstances. They had to give up everything they owned, their houses, their apartments, their money, and get ready for this transport. They were not told where they were going to go. That transport eventually ended up in Theresienstadt. So there were only 4 families left in Wiesbaden at that point. Everybody else had been deported, either to be killed in Poland or to Theresienstadt. Those 4 families were all in the same circumstances as my parents. There were mixed marriages where the mother had converted to become Jewish. The non-Jewish wives, or the formerly non-Jewish wives, were told repeatedly by the Gestapo officers to get themselves divorced from their Jewish husbands, because then they would have all their rights and they wouldn't be suffering together with the criminal Jews. But none of them took them up on this. They all stayed with their husbands, which saved our lives. There were air raids during the war, and we weren't allowed to go to the shelters which were meant for all other German people. So we went down to the coal cellar, which wasn't really protected because there was glass windows, and things worked out pretty good. I mean, we survived. My father and my brother and I went together. My mother had to go to work downtown, and sometimes it was kind of sticky to find out what happened when she was in her store. We got postcards from the transport, from the people that went to Theresienstadt. They were allowed to send 10 words on a postcard. Every month, I think, they could send one. And basically what it said, thank you very much for the flour that you sent us, which indicated that they wanted flour. They wanted something to eat in Theresienstadt. So we sent small packages, and as far as we know, they received some of them. In the meantime, the 5 kids, 5 of our friends in the same age bracket that were left in Wiesbaden, had really nothing to do. We couldn't go outside because German kids would throw rocks at us. So we went into each other's homes. We played games, card games, board games, whatever, to try to entertain ourselves, and our parents did what they could to make life a little easier. Then on February 14th, 1945, which was pretty close to the end of the war, the Jewish partners of these mixed marriages were ordered to report to the Gestapo for deportation. Again, they said for work, without saying where we were going. My father actually volunteered to go with my brother and me. He was injured from the First World War, and he could have stayed in Wiesbaden with my mother, but he decided that because he was a Jewish partner that insisted that my mother convert, and then we were brought up Jewish, he felt a great responsibility to stay with us and protect us as much as possible. So we went together. We had to buy our tickets to go to Frankfurt, which was the first stage of the transportation, with the Gestapo in the same train. And we were assembled in an old Jewish building in Frankfurt, which was practically destroyed by bombs during the war. And I remember there were American fighter planes that attacked the railroad station. Fortunately, nobody got hurt that we know of. We got loaded into cattle cars, about 40 people per car, and there were about 1,000 people, which were mostly the Jewish partners of mixed marriages, men, women, and children. My father was very protective of us kids when he could. Even in the cattle car, other people told me, I don't remember myself, but other people told me that he insisted that people make room for us in the car, and space was very limited, as you can imagine. There were many stops, and we took 4 days on the train to end up in Theresienstadt eventually. There was a raid, an air raid, on the city of Dresden during the time we were in the train. And I remember the German crew departed and hid in the woods somewhere, and they left the train standing there. afraid